My name is Sarah Thompson. I have 29 years old and I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. I grew up in a simple but faith-filled family. My grandmother, Martha, was the one who taught me to pray. She would say, "Sarah, when the world screams, listen to God's whisper." These words echo within me to this day. Ever since I was a child, I felt that my mission went beyond the walls of my city. At 22, I graduated in nursing, and at 25, I left everything behind to follow my missionary calling. It wasn't easy. I left behind comfort, stability, even a promising relationship, but there was something bigger waiting for me. Something that, at the time, I couldn't yet understand. In November 2023, I was invited by a Christian organization to join a humanitarian and spiritual mission in interior of Alaska. It was a remote area, where few voices reached and where winter arrived like a heavy silence, covering everything in white. There, indigenous communities faced abandonment, spiritual hunger, and a loneliness that was more cutting than the cold. We arrived with Bibles, medicine, and most of all, hope. I cared for the children, taught them about health, and told them stories of Jesus around campfires as snowflakes fell silently outside the cabins. It was there that I saw the saddest eyes and the most sincere hugs. It was there that I felt God closest to me. But there was something in the air, something I couldn't explain, a constant feeling of urgency. I prayed every night for protection, but also asked myself, "Lord, am I ready for whatever comes?" No, December 14th, everything changed. We were driving back from a small village when the blizzard began. The road disappeared under the snow. The driver, a kind man named Michael, was doing his best to maintain control. But around a bend, everything went dark. I remember the sound of ice breaking, the scream of one of the girls, and then silence. A silence that swallowed me. And if you felt something up until now, if this story touched your heart in any way, I ask that you like this video and subscribe to the channel. There is still a lot I need to tell, and what comes next is unbelievable. I didn't feel pain. That was the strangest thing. After the impact, there was only darkness. Not a terrifying darkness, but dense, absolute darkness, as if time had stopped. I heard nothing, saw nothing, and yet there was a strange awareness, as if my soul was trying to make sense of what had just happened. Slowly, distant sounds began to reach me. A whistle, muffled voices, then a siren. But it all seemed so far away from me. It was as if I were trapped between two worlds. It took almost 40 minutes for the rescue team to find us. We were stuck on an isolated curve, with snow completely covering the car. Michael, the driver, survived with fractures. 2 of the girls were in shock, 1 with minor injuries. And me, I was motionless. No pulse, no heartbeat, no response. I was rushed to the nearest hospital, a simple medical center in Name, Alaska. There, a small but dedicated team tried to revive my body. It took 18 minutes of trying. Adrenaline injections, cardiac massages, defibrillator. But at 4:47 p.m., the doctor in charge, Dr. Elaine Morrison, declared my death. They signed the papers. They covered my body with a thermal blanket. They put me in a cold room, as per protocol. And then something unbelievable happened. But before I tell you what happened there, I want to talk about what was happening to me on the other side. Because yes, there was another side. While the doctors were desperately trying to bring me back, I felt an inexplicable lightness. It was as if I was floating, free from pain, from matter. I saw my own body lying on the stretcher. I saw the nurse crying. I saw Dr. Elaine looking at her watch, defeated. I wanted to scream, "Hey, I'm here. I'm still here." But my mouth didn't move. My body was no longer mine. It was just a shell. And then, I was taken. I don't know how. I didn't walk. I didn't fly. I was just transported by a soft, almost maternal light. There were no walls. There was no time. There was only peace. A peace so deep that it made me cry. Even without eyes, without tears, without a body. It was the first time in my life that I felt love in its purest form, without demands, without fear, without judgment. And it was there, in that space of light and silence, that I heard a name being whispered. Mine. Sarah. A male voice, firm but full of tenderness. I recognized it. My heart, or what was left of it, recognized it. Jesus? The light intensified, but before I could get any closer, everything shook. Suddenly, I was pulled back violently, as if someone had grabbed me by the chest and thrown me backwards. My eyes opened. I screamed. I was lying on a cold gurney, covered by a sheet. A doctor let out a startled cry. The nurse dropped her clipboard. Dr. Elaine ran toward me, pale. I was back. After 18 minutes, dead. I was alive. But what I saw there, what I heard, was just the beginning. While I struggled between two worlds, my team lived one of the darkest days of their lives. They didn't know I had returned. To them, I was dead. Michael, still with his arm in a cast and a deep cut on his forehead, refused to rest. He paced the hospital reception area, asking every 5 minutes if there was any news, even though he knew the answer. His eyes were red, not only from the physical pain, but from guilt. I should have stopped the car. I should have waited for the storm to pass. He repeated to himself, as if those words could change what had happened. The girls on the mission, Rachel, Emily, and June, were devastated. Rachel was the closest to me. We slept in the same tent, shared prayers, and shared laughter. When she heard the news, she fell to her knees in the hospital hallway, screaming my name. June tried to hold her, but Rachel was inconsolable. She cried like someone who had lost a piece of their soul. In the hospital chapel, a small room with worn wooden pews, Emily knelt before the makeshift altar. Her hands shook, and all she could say was, "Why, Lord? Why her?" Across the country, in Charleston, my mother got the news by phone. It was Michael who called. According to him, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat there in silence for a long time and then said, "She was yours. She always was." And he hung up. My mother always knew my path would be different. But no mother is prepared to bury a 29-year-old daughter. No one is. Meanwhile, news of the accident began to spread among the churches we were in contact with. The mission's social media was filled with messages. Photos of me were shared with phrases like, "She rested in the Lord," and "She gave her life for her faith." I read these messages days later, and I cried. But at that moment, while everyone believed I was gone, something extraordinary was about to happen. My eyes flew open, and for the first time, I felt physical pain, an intense burning in my chest, as if I had been ripped from the sky and forcibly glued back to the earth. I tried to speak, but all I could manage was a hoarse sound. The nurse next to me screamed, She's alive!" Dr. Elaine ran in, astonished. "My God! How is this possible?" I was immediately taken to the ICU. The monitors were beeping, tubes, needles, tests. It was like a scene from a movie, but all I could think about was one thing. I had come back for a reason. I saw Jesus. I heard his voice, and he showed me something that wasn't just for me. It was for all of us. A few hours later, still weak, I asked for paper and pen. My hands were barely moving, but I needed to record everything, every word, every image, before they were lost. And that's why I'm here now, telling you this story. To let you know that death is not the end, and that what comes after is more real than anything we know here. Words will fail. I already know that, because nothing, absolutely nothing of what we experienced here compares to what I saw on the other side. And yet, I will try to describe with all my heart what happened to me after my body was declared dead. I remember the moment I left the hospital room in spirit. I was enveloped by a darkness so thick it felt alive. It wasn't scary, but it was imposing. It was as if I had been swallowed by the universe. And then, a light appeared, first as a point, then as a presence. This light did not come from outside. It was born within me, and the closer I got to it, the more I felt a peace that could not be translated. It was not a peace of absence of problems. It was a peace that spoke directly to the soul, that said, "You are loved. You are seen. You are eternal." My feet didn't touch the ground. I had no body, But I was still me. I knew who I was. I knew my story, my name, my sins. And yet, that light welcomed me. I saw scenes from my life playing out like a movie. Some were good, some were hard to watch. I saw when I was rude to my mother. I saw when I silently judged people. I saw when I failed to help out of pride. But I also saw when I forgave, when I embraced, when I prayed with true faith, and I understood. That was not a punishment. It was a mirror of the soul. I felt someone approaching. I didn't see a face. I didn't need to. I knew. It was him. A presence so intense that my thoughts fell silent. There was no fear. There was reverence. It was like standing before absolute love, but also before absolute truth. "Sarah," he said. My soul trembled. "You're not done yet." I wanted to beg to stay. I wanted to hold on to that peace, that light, that absence of pain. But Jesus didn't give me a choice. He showed me something. I saw the world. I saw people crying in their rooms, begging for answers. I saw families falling apart, young people losing their faith, churches becoming stages. I saw indifference growing like a disease. I saw hearts hardening. And then I heard, "Come back. Tell them I'm still here. But time is running out." Those words cut through me like blades. Time is running out. They echoed within me like an urgent call, a spiritual alarm. Before I could ask more, I was pulled away forcefully. Everything spun. Everything shook. The light went out. And then, my eyes opened in the freezing cold hospital room. I screamed. I was alive. But something had changed forever. My spirit no longer fit in this body. Since then, I have carried with me a mission that is no longer mine. It is his. And that's why I tell this story. He was there. I cannot explain with human words what it is like to be before Jesus. It wasn't a body. It wasn't a classical figure like we see in paintings. It was presence, light, a vibration of love so intense that I felt like every part of my soul was being embraced and exposed at the same time. But even without a visible face, I knew. It was him. I didn't need to ask. My soul recognized it. And he called me by name. Sarah. It was as if the sound of his voice carried the truth about me entirely. My memories, my fears, my joys, my doubts. Everything was brought to the surface, without judgment, but with a clarity that made me cry. Tears that didn't run down my face. They ran straight down my soul. "Have you loved as I have taught you?" The question went through me. And in that moment, I saw people I had hurt out of pride. Situations where silence would have been more noble. Words that had hurt. Gestures that had been missed. I saw faces I had forgotten. I felt the impact of my choices like waves spreading and returning. But I also saw the times when I chose good, even when it hurt. I saw when I gave my time, when I forgave without being understood, when I prayed even without faith, and he saw everything. Jesus didn't accuse me. He didn't condemn me. He just showed me, as if to say, "See, this is the effect of your love, and this is the effect of your absence of it." Then he took me to a high place, not physically, but in spirit. It was like floating above the earth. I saw entire cities shrouded in a dark mist. It wasn't a literal mist. It was a spiritual mist. A darkness made of coldness, unbelief, pride. "They are forgetting," he said. "Forgetting me. Forgetting that I am real." That broke my heart. Jesus' pain was not about him. It was about us. You will return, and you will tell what you saw. Some will mock. Others will remember. And that is enough. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. It was as if my soul was in tears. I didn't want to leave, but I knew my mission was not over yet. Before leaving, I heard one last sentence. "Don't come back the same. Come back with courage." And then I was thrown back. The light disappeared, the sky closed in, and I was back to the weight of my body, the ache in my bones, the cold of the hospital, and the responsibility of carrying this experience with me for the rest of my life. Now, looking at all this, I ask myself, have you ever felt like Jesus was trying to show you something? Something you didn't understand at the time but now makes sense? If so, tell me in the comments. I want to read your story. I want to know what he has been saying to you. Your experience can also touch other hearts here." I woke up with a scream. It wasn't mine. The nurse who came into the room to check the death certificate saw me move my fingers and let out a sound that sounded more like a frightened sob. I was lying on a metal stretcher, covered up to my neck with a thermal blanket. My lips were purple, my body was cold. And yet, I was breathing. Weakly, but I was breathing. I remember exactly what it felt like to be back. It was as if someone had ripped me out of an eternity and sewn me back into the flesh. My bones ached, my skin burned, but the sharpest pain came from my soul, because the peace I had experienced there had been brutally interrupted. The attending physician, Dr. Elaine Morrison, rushed into the room, her face pale. She was holding a chart in her hand, and when she saw my eyes open, she dropped it on the floor. "It's not possible. This is not possible," she mumbled, trying to understand. She ordered tests, called specialists, wrote down schedules. The timeline simply didn't make sense to any of them. I was declared dead for 18 minutes. Technically, there was no pulse, no breathing, no brain activity. Everything was documented. But there I was, alive, breathing, and with such a clear awareness of what had happened that I didn't even know how to explain it. For the next 2 days, I remained hospitalized. With each doctor's visit, more questions arose. Do you remember anything? Do you know where you are? Do you remember the accident? And I remembered everything. The accident, the hospital, the crossing, and especially him. It was only when I asked for a Bible that they began to understand that this was not a simple return to life. Something had happened to me, something bigger, and I needed to tell them. The first person I shared it with was Rachel, my friend from the mission. When she came into the room and saw me alive, she fell to her knees beside the bed. She was crying like a child. "You're back. Oh my God, you're back." I held her hand with difficulty, looked into her eyes and said, "I've been with Jesus." She froze. We were silent for long minutes. Then she began asking questions, one after another. What did he say? What was it like? Why did you come back? And for the first time, I told everything, without cutting out details, without sugarcoating anything. Her reaction was one of reverence, of faith, but also of fear. "You know what this means, don't you?" she whispered. I knew. I was carrying a message, and it wouldn't be easy. When I was finally discharged, there were already people outside the hospital. Someone had posted that a woman had come back from the dead in Alaska, and the news spread like wildfire. But at that moment, all I wanted was silence and a place to pray. I walked back to the small mission hut. I knelt on the wooden floor and cried, not out of sadness, but out of surrender. I had survived, but more than that, I had been chosen to say something, to warn, to remind the world that he still speaks. And that time is running out. What I had seen on the other side was still pulsing inside me. The images, the words, the pain in Jesus's gaze. Everything was vivid, urgent, like a clock counting down inside my chest. And it was there, kneeling in that cabin, that I understood. My old life had ended the day of that accident. Now, I was a messenger. It took me 2 whole days to be able to write clearly everything I saw and heard in that place between life and death. It wasn't just a memory. It was as if every word was engraved inside me, with fire. There was no way to forget it. There was no way to ignore it. The message I received from Jesus was not long, but it was cutting. He did not give me a prophecy like the ones we usually see in religious movies or books. There was no thunder, no apocalyptic scenarios, but there was a weight, a silence, an urgency that cannot be described, only felt. The exact words I heard were, "Come back, and tell them I'm still here, that they avoid me, that they exchange me, that they forget me. But I don't go away. I still wait. But time is running out." These words echoed inside me like a silent earthquake. I'm still here. Yes, he is still there. In the dark room of those who suffer in silence. In the hospital where no one believes anymore. In the heart of that lonely lady who still bends her knees at night. In every corner where hope tries to resist. But the hard truth is that we are forgetting him. He showed me scenes. So many scenes. Faces. Crowds walking in a hurry, without looking up. Churches full of vanity, but empty of truth. Religious leaders more concerned with likes than with souls. I saw children learning about everything, except love. I saw families torn apart by pride. Couples who sleep side by side, but live in opposite worlds. Parents who hand their children screens and forget to show them affection. Children who no longer know how to pray. And I saw good people, many of them, tired, suffocated, trying to keep their faith in a world that mocks everything that is sacred. Jesus' message was clear. He did not come back to give me fame. He did not choose me so that I would be admired. He chose me because someone needed to say, "He is waiting," but not forever. He showed me the heart of a world that is slowly hardening, a world that runs in all directions, but forgets to look within, a world that lives in a hurry, but dies empty. After I wrote it all down, I showed it to my team first. The reaction was mixed. Some cried. Others were silent. One of them, Michael, left the room. He came back an hour later with puffy eyes and said, "I need to change my life." And that's when I realized the message wasn't for large crowds. It was for one at a time. It was for anyone who was ready to listen. It was for you who made it this far. You don't have to believe me, but you need to hear this. You are seen. You are loved. But you are also responsible for what you carry in your heart. I thought my life had already changed by dying and coming back, but I was wrong. The real change began when I decided to make the message I received public. It all started with a simple video, recorded with an old cell phone, sitting next to the mission fireplace, with Rachel holding the camera. I spoke as I am speaking now. No rehearsals, no makeup, no script. Just my bare heart, telling what I experienced. Rachel posted the video on the Mission channel with the title, "I have returned from the dead, what Jesus told me to say." That first night, the video got a few hundred views, people from church, friends, curious onlookers. But by the second day, it was as if the world had stopped to listen. Thousands of views per hour, sharing in prayer groups, Christian pages, spiritual forums, people writing from everywhere, Oregon, Texas, Brazil, Nigeria, South Korea. Some said, "I saw something like that too." Others, "I got goosebumps from head to toe." And many, "I hadn't prayed in years, but today, after your video, I started talking to God again." It was beautiful and scary, because along with the testimonies of faith came the attacks. Skeptics, militant atheists, people saying that it was all a farce, that I was delirious, that I was just a young girl in need of attention. Some said I needed psychiatric help. Others said I was selling Jesus for likes. Social media became a battlefield. My name appeared in local newspapers, and within a few days, I was invited to participate in talk shows, religious programs, and interview channels. But I turned most of them down, because my mission was not to appear, it was to advertise. Still, I went on a Christian talk show in Nashville. The host treated me with respect, but his questions were sharp. He wanted certainty, proof. Did you see Jesus? Did he speak to you directly? Wasn't that just a dream? And I understand. I also doubted at first, but there is something that no one can take away from me. The transformation that this caused, inside and outside of me. I have received letters from women in their 70s and 80s saying that they have reconciled with God after decades. I have seen men crying in the comments, saying that they have decided to ask their children for forgiveness. I have seen young people saying that they have given up their addictions, all because of a simple message. He's still here, and he still loves us. But what struck me most was a handwritten letter from a lady named Dorothy in Spokane. She said, "Sarah, I lost my husband, my daughter, and my faith. But today, after watching your video, I bent my knees for the first time in 19 years. I don't know if God still hears me, but I choose to believe that he does." It destroyed me inside, but in the best way. That's when I realized the mission was just beginning. I began to realize that the message I brought from the other side was not just a testimony. It was a game changer. Jesus' words had touched not only my life, but the lives of hundreds, perhaps thousands of people. It all started with small signs. Rachel, my missionary friend, was a woman of faith, but also of pain. She had lost a brother to suicide and had been carrying a silent guilt ever since. After hearing my story, she cried for hours, as if washing away years of accumulated anguish. Days later, she told me, "It was the first time in a long time that I felt like God still saw me." Michael, the driver who survived the accident, changed completely. He was a skeptic, always respectful, but distant from spiritual things. After the accident, he visited me often. One day, while we were having coffee on the mission porch, he said to me with tears in his eyes, "I was the man who doubted. But when I saw you alive and heard what you said, something inside me broke. I don't know how to pray like you, Sarah, but I think I want to learn." And he learned. Today, he leads a support group for other men in the local community, men who have lost their way but found hope in his words. The messages kept coming, from women who had decided to forgive their unfaithful husbands, not out of weakness, but out of liberation. From young men who were on the verge of taking their own lives and, upon hearing my video, decided to try one more day. Just one more day. That ended up changing everything. But it wasn't just others who changed. I was transformed too. Before the accident, I believed in God with my mind. Now, I carry him in my chest like a breath. Faith stopped being a belief. It became my reality. I no longer prayed to ask. I prayed to align myself with whatever he wanted to do through me. And this new spiritual sensitivity made me more vulnerable as well. I could sense when someone around me was in pain, even if they were smiling. I could feel when I walked into a room and there was a heavy atmosphere there, as if something invisible was screaming. I began visiting hospitals, not as a nurse, but as a witness. I would sit next to terminally ill patients and tell them my story. Some would smile, others would cry, but everyone, without exception, would listen with an open heart. A lady with advanced cancer took my hand and said, "Now I'm not afraid anymore. If it's what you saw, then I can go in peace." These experiences left a deeper impression on me than any applause, more than any internet following. It was there, deep down, eye to eye, that I saw the real power of the message I carried. But the more lives we touched, the more I felt an invisible resistance growing. Strange dreams began to haunt me, nightmares of mocking voices, shadows watching me. I would wake in the middle of the night with a suffocating feeling that something, or someone, wanted to silence me. And deep down, I knew the enemy was bothered. Nothing could prepare me for what came next. After the message spread, lives began to be transformed. Testimonies began to reach me from all sides. I thought, naively, that the hardest part was over. But that's when the real battle began. The first few weeks after my return were filled with intense peace, as if the sky were still gently enveloping me. But soon this calm was replaced by a tension I could not name. It was as if a shadow had begun to creep toward me, invisible but present. It all started with dreams. In the first one, I was standing in front of a mirror. My reflection was looking back at me, but it wasn't me. It had my eyes, my face, but it was smiling in a cold, empty way. When I tried to back away, he yelled, "Stop talking." I woke up sweating, my heart racing. The next night, I woke up at 3:13 a.m. with a pressure on my chest. It wasn't physical. It was as if something spiritual was trying to suffocate me. I got up, went into the small room of the cabin, knelt on the floor, and began to pray. But the words were hard to come out. There was a resistance, as if each sentence was being forced out with effort. It was the first time since my experience that I had felt real fear. A cold fear. A fear that said, "You're messing with things you shouldn't be messing with." I told Rachel. She was startled, but firm. "What you experienced has shaken the spiritual world, Sarah. Do you think the enemy will keep quiet?" These words woke me up. Sure, that was it. The fight was not against flesh and blood. It was against forces that operate in the unseen, and that were troubled by every soul touched by that message. Soon strange things began to happen. lights that flickered for no reason, objects that fell on their own, sounds in the night. Even visitors to the mission reported strange sensations upon entering the cabin: chills, dizziness, heaviness in the air. One particularly difficult morning, I woke up with the feeling that someone was watching me. When I opened my eyes, I saw a dark figure standing in the corner of the room. It had no exact shape, but I felt hatred coming from it. A silent but fierce hatred. I closed my eyes tightly, and with everything I had, I whispered, "Jesus." Just that, and the figure disappeared. From that day on, I understood that it was not enough to just tell about my experience. I needed to fight spiritually. I began to fast, to pray more deeply, to delve into the scriptures. And it was during this delve that I found a passage that seemed to have been written for me. Therefore, take up the complete armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day. Ephesians 6:13. I wasn't alone. I never was. But I needed to be prepared. I understood that every true mission attracts opposition, and that the brighter you shine, the more the darkness tries to extinguish it. But there was a certainty within me, firm as a rock. Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. After the spiritual storm came silence. But it was not an empty silence. It was a sacred silence. A subtle interval between fear and revelation. It was in this space that he visited me again. That night, there were no screams, no shadows, no nightmares, just a light wind coming through the crack in the window. I was sitting on the floor of my room, with the Bible open on my lap, when a very deep peace enveloped me. It was as if time had stopped again. It wasn't the same as the experience I had had in death, but it was similar, recognizable. I closed my eyes, and I heard the voice, this time firmer, more direct. "Get up. There's more." My heart raced. Was there more? I thought my mission was just to tell what I saw, to warn, to touch lives. But now, he was telling me there was something even bigger, something I needed to do, even if I didn't fully understand it. The presence felt closer. My entire body reacted. Tears flowed effortlessly, as if my soul was being washed again. Gather, pray, announce. And then images began to pass before my eyes. Not clearly, but as a vision constructed by faith. I saw people gathering in the open air. Simple people, mothers with children in their arms, men with their eyes closed and hands raised. I saw prayers being said out loud, spontaneously, without structure. I saw miracles happening there, in the midst of dust and faith. And I saw my face, in the midst of them. Jesus didn't just want me to tell what I experienced. He wanted me to return to the people, to leave the screen, the safety of the videos, and go to where the pain lived, where faith still struggled to breathe. It was a new calling, a second sending, more challenging, more exposed. I got up in the middle of the night. I wrote it all down. And the next day, I announced to my team, "Let's have an outdoor service, wherever God sends us." Rachel was silent. Then she smiled. I was expecting that. Michael just nodded, his eyes welling up. In the following days, we began to prepare everything. No sponsorship, no professional structure, just faith, some borrowed speakers, donated chairs, and the space of an open field in the nearby mountains. We spread the word however we could. Social media, local churches, word of mouth. And then, one Saturday morning at 10 a.m., people started arriving. First came dozens, then came hundreds. Some came from far away. An 81-year-old woman from Minnesota said she rode the bus for 2 days because she had a dream in which I held her hand and said, "He still sees you." Others arrived in silence, carrying pains that we did not know about, but that would soon be delivered to the heavens. The air was thick with expectation, with raw faith, with thirst. I climbed onto a small wooden structure, took the microphone in my hands and closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, and when I opened my eyes, I saw something that took my breath away. But that is what you will discover in the last chapter. What happened at that service wasn't just a closure, it was a revelation, and perhaps the beginning of something even greater. The field was full. People of all ages, colors, and stories. There was no screen, no stage, no spotlights. Just a makeshift piece of wood as a pulpit, a simple microphone, and a clear sky as a witness. The air carried something you couldn't see, but felt. A sacred expectation. It was as if time itself was holding its breath. I took the microphone with trembling hands. For a second, I hesitated. I looked at those hundreds of faces. Some curious, some distressed, all hungry for something the world no longer knows how to offer. And then I closed my eyes and said, "He's still here." The words came out loaded with something that didn't just come from me. Jesus did not bring me back to be remembered, but so that he would be remembered. What I saw on the other side was not an end. It was a warning. Time waits not, but his love is still waiting. In the middle of the crowd, a woman began to cry loudly. She was shaking. A young man ran to her, knelt down, and hugged her. Within seconds, others began to fall to their knees. People who had never prayed out loud began to speak to God as if they had known him for years. It was at that moment that everything became different. The sky, so blue, began to cloud over. But it wasn't a storm. It was a light, intense, golden, enveloping. No one was frightened. On the contrary, everyone looked up with shining eyes. I felt my body light, as if the boundary between heaven and earth was blurring. And then I heard it again. The voice. Now they know. Now they remember. I can't say if the others heard it, but everyone felt it. That presence. The same one that found me when I died. Now it was there. Alive. Real. Present. The service lasted for hours, but no one wanted to leave. People reconciled. Children asked their parents for forgiveness. Couples embraced in silence. Strangers became brothers. And there, in that field without luxury, without cameras, without fame, Jesus was glorified. When it was all over, I sat down on the edge of the lawn, took off my shoes, and stared up at the sky. Rachel sat down next to me and asked, "What now? What comes next?" I smiled with tears in my eyes. Now, it's up to them. My mission there was accomplished. I had delivered the message. I had touched the souls that were ready. And whatever came next was no longer up to me. But before I end this story, I want to say something directly to you who have come this far. If this story spoke to you, if it touched something deep inside that was perhaps dormant, then don't let it die here. Subscribe to the channel right now. Here, each story is a seed, and each seed can blossom in the right heart. If you made it to the end, I want to invite you to comment. I also remember that he is still here. This simple gesture can touch other lives, encourage others to watch until the end, and perhaps rediscover their faith. Leave your like too. It's a small act, but with a huge impact. The next video is already on the screen, waiting for you. It's another true story, full of faith, emotion, and purpose. Because when he speaks, we feel. And when we feel, we share.